fantastic work to keep farmland from development, just like Wright-Locke Farm has done. I'm so impressed that you guys bought up this whole ring around the farm so that you won't have development encroaching on your beautiful farmland. But there are ways to keep doing that. There's more farmland that needs to be saved. You can be working for policies at all scales, local, state, national. And finally, you can work with these various organizations that are out there, like Food Solutions New England. Come to one of the food summits if this is something that's interesting to you. Go onto the website, see when the next one is, and come. You can talk to people about the vision or talk to people about other things that Food Solutions New England and like-minded people are working on. And I suspect this crowd, given that you have so much appreciation for Wright-Locke Farm, I suspect that many of you would be quite interested in the kinds of things that come up in the food summits. But there's several other really good groups. The New England Farmers Union, the Northeast Sustainable Ag Working Group that holds annual conferences. FINE is a group that works specifically on farm to institution New England and increasing the amount of sales that go of local food that go to hospitals, schools, municipal cafeterias, universities, and colleges. NOFA is your local organic farming organization. Massachusetts has a really good branch of NOFA. And NAMA, which I mentioned earlier, is the Northeast Atlantic Marine Alliance, Northwest Atlantic. Thank you. I always get turned around because the ocean, we're in the Northeast, so shouldn't it be the Northeast? But it's the Northwest Atlantic Marine Alliance. Fishermen are having exactly the same problems that farmers are having. So Niaz Dori and the other people working with NAMA are trying to support family fishermen who are fighting to maintain working waterfront and to keep fisheries vital and supportive of fishing communities. I know that UPS has worked with anti-hunger organizations to try to figure if there's a way that they can backhaul when they drop off something, they could load up with food and backhaul any surplus food that needs to be distributed. So there's probably potential. That's one of those challenges that somebody needs to work out. Those of you in the audience who are students, it'd be a great master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. I don't have the answer, but I think there are ways to do it. I know that there are interesting ways that other countries are dealing with food waste too, to just make it work better, like this, and not necessarily other countries, but the store that just started up in Boston that's selling things that are close to expiration date at very low cost. That's one way to do it. People are so confused about those expiration dates, best by, sell by, best used by. It's just mind-boggling. That whole system needs to be simplified. To be honest, we didn't talk about food waste at all in the vision. I don't think it came up. I brought it in because it's something that's really been like even John Oliver did a whole show on food waste. So I'm sure that many of you are aware of the problem of food waste, but we didn't really talk about what the implications would be of implementing the vision. I think some of that, some food waste is going to happen regardless, and some is actually good. I mean, the stalks, the really tough stalks, and the leaves from broccoli, you're not going to get people to eat that stuff. So feeding animals, yes, really good for that. The thing is when it becomes part of landfill, that's where it's really a serious problem. I think Vermont is doing a hierarchy of where surplus food should go. I think that's a very good start. As soon as we can work out the logistics, and actually worked with a group of students who were interested in sorting out some of those logistics, and there are people in the State Department of Food and Agriculture who are working on it as well. So I think we'll get there. For local and sustainable, she asked if that included places like backyard farms in Maine where they're growing tomatoes year-round in hothouses. I would say that would take a group of people thinking through the pros and cons. To me, that's not the best way to raise tomatoes. And I would encourage people to wait until tomatoes are ripe, and you will enjoy them so much more. If you haven't been eating those cardboard tomatoes through the winter, we could be importing tomatoes from Connecticut, say the southern parts of New England, before they're ripe up here. So that's part of what we get with a regional vision. But again, with none of these scenarios, we aren't saying absolutely no food imports. Nobody's saying you can't drink coffee anymore, or you can't have chocolate because we can't grow cacao here. The idea is that you still will be importing some of your food, but just less. For the question was about seasonality and how we would be getting the nutrients we need if we focus on seasonality throughout the year when some snow is this deep. It's a good question, and we would definitely encourage, I think it's fair to speak for the team in this, we would definitely encourage people to be eating more seasonally, because that's a great way to support regional farmers. But you can use season extenders, which really help. There are people like Elliot Coleman up in Maine who, he has stopped growing. He's on the coast of Maine. He doesn't even market produce in the summer. He only markets produce in the winter because he is such a good farmer. He uses different season extenders, and he makes a lot more money by growing in the winter than by trying to grow in the summer. So season extenders would help a lot. And by season extenders, I mean things like row covers. And there are farmers in the audience here, so I'm not going to go too far out on a limb there. But you guys know a lot more about this than I do. But you could do that. You could also be doing a whole lot more to be preserving food, like canning, things that people used to do all the time in New England. Having a really big garden and then putting up enough tomatoes that they last you through until the next year. Or storing your potatoes down in the basement. We did that last year, and we still have potatoes from last year. So there's a lot of potential in preservation techniques, different kinds of preservation techniques that we are not maximizing at all as we just go to the grocery store and buy whatever looks good and is cheap. My one reservation about that, and also vertical farming, you see a lot, there's a fellow, Des Pommier, in New York, who's a real advocate for vertical farming, like converting these whole big buildings, big box stores that have been abandoned, converting them into food production sites. My big reservation there is energy use, that they tend to require a lot of energy. So if you can put solar panels up and have a renewable energy source, okay. Hydroponics is actually kind of nice for water use because you can reuse the water. So I don't have any aversion to hydroponics. There's a big debate on right now of whether organic hydroponic can be certified organic. And there are a lot of people who are saying, if it's organic, it's grown in soil. That's it. And I'm sympathetic to that, but I also think that there's a place for hydroponics. There are actually other parts of the country who have come to the authors of the plan, like Brian, and said, how can we do this? Because they really love it. Partly just the idea of creating a vision that people can work toward, something that's inspiring. I think everybody feels that need. There's a group around Chicago that's very interested in having a Midwestern vision. And I think it would be very cool to have the Midwestern vision linked in with the New England vision, because we're relying on the Midwest to continue supplying a lot of our grains and beans, but they could be doing a lot more for themselves too. I know that they are not growing enough fruits and vegetables. Well, around Michigan, lots of fruit production and fruit processing too, actually. But they could be growing a lot more to feed themselves and not just corn for feedstock or for biofuel. That's where most of it goes, most of the corn. It's not being used for human consumption, the Midwestern corn. What are the leverage points? What really needs to change? Can we kind of stick a lever in there and move this very intransigent system and have people demanding local food, expecting local food? And that's how we came up with those 3 different strategies of the new narrative, which I would say is fundamental to any kind of change. We need to start thinking and talking about food in a different way. Instead of expecting to get fast food, expecting that as our treat, local seasonal food should be our big treat. That's what we eat when we want to really be good to ourselves, instead of going out and getting sweet treats. So that new narrative, to me, underpins it. And getting people to think in a different way, really to have different assumptions about where their food is coming from. I know it has happened in other countries. For instance, in Brazil, the schools are being supplied by local farmers. That's very standard. It's part of the way that they have addressed food insecurity, and addressed it very successfully too. So we should just be expecting, of course, kids in schools will get the very best food, and the very best food is going to come from local and regional farmers. No. And when I talked about growing 50% of what we produce here, I don't mean literally 50%. I mean 50% of the dollar value of what we eat here. So we could be sending beef, we could be sending milk products, we could be sending cheese back to the Midwest. They can't raise cows as well as we can. We have beautiful pastures in New England that are just perfect for dairy. Michael Rosine, who runs an organization called Red Tomato, says we need to be holding these difficult conversations, and that's one of the big questions in front of us. How do we both make food affordable, healthy food, not just food, but how do we make healthy food affordable to everyone, and also ensure that farmers have a decent wage? My answer is that we need much more economic equity in this country, that the inequality is, as folks who've been looking at news about this are aware, the inequality in this country has just surged. It's really at a frightening level. We need that. We need to have government subsidies for healthy food for anyone who can't either grow their own or get a decent job paying good wages without having to work 2 or 3 jobs, which I know many people do, in order to support themselves. They should be getting a subsidy from the government to support being able to get healthy food. So people who are disabled, elderly people, children, those are all folks who should be supported by our government. Our government should be taking care of us. It shouldn't be allowing this kind of inequity to fester and to continue growing. So that's my answer, and it's strongly tinged with my political biases. But I do look at other countries that seem to have a much higher quality of life with much greater equity than the United States does. And I don't think those two things are not associated. They're very closely related. I have never mentioned the T word through this whole talk, and I admit completely this is a very, very difficult time to be working. But partly because we see these very obvious things that we don't agree with, that many of us don't agree with, happening at the national level, I think people are being energized. I talked with Bill McKibben over the copy machine. He's on the faculty at Middlebury, and he said Trump has done marvels for us. He has created so many opportunities for organizing. And that is exactly what this democratic empowerment strategy is all about. That people need to start demanding that our government take care of us instead of taking care of wealthy people. And we've been in that trap for far too long. It's super difficult, and I get very discouraged too. You're lucky to have Elizabeth Warren here. Maybe not everybody in the room is an Elizabeth Warren supporter, but I think she's been fighting really hard for the common people in the state of Massachusetts and in the country. So supporting the people who are making the choices and fighting for the things that you can believe in, that's one thing you can do now. And then just keep trying to build those alternatives like Wright-Locke Farm. In some ways, this is a kind of oasis in the middle of the time of troubles that we are going through right now. Support these beautiful alternative systems and be ready with something like the New England Food Vision and policies that will support it to roll those out as soon as we can get rid of the big trouble. The big trouble at the top. Yes, you guys have been a great audience and great questions.